Annyeonghaseyo! Welcome to Afternoona Delight, where Leah, Megan, and Amy, romance novelists, and your K-romance guides. So grab some dekboki and listen to your new favorite unnies. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Leah.
It's been a minute since we've gotten to do a pod just us.
It has. What did we do last? Was it Moon Lovers? I think it might have been Moon Lovers.
I think it was Moon Lovers, and that was a minute ago.
I was just talking Moon Lovers. So quick plug for the for our Afternoona Asks podcast, which for those of you who don't know, I co-host with Grace. So we've just done a podcast which was a ton of fun with Jess from Dayback Rambles, K-Rambles podcast. And you've done an episode on her podcast before. I think you did Strong Woman de Bon Song with her, didn't you?
Yes.
Anyway, we had Jess on just to have a chat to her about like K-dramas in general and how she started and everything. And she mentioned that IU is actually one of her favorite actresses, which then led me into saying that I love IU. I love my mister. This is going to probably come up in our podcast today. But then I couldn't resist just doing a dump like on IU in Moon Lovers. Because then it was just all... Because Jess has done a Moon Lovers podcast as well, which I think was kind of more cathartic for me than it would be for you.
Look, if you want to hear the we had different opinions on Moon Lovers. So.
We did. Can I just say also, I felt a little bit sorry for you these last couple of podcasts as your fellow co-host. Have no plans whatsoever to watch any of your favourite shows?
None. Actually, I feel... Okay, so look, you might need to come into this one. So I do want to say that this year, at this point, there's some more I need to catch up on, so I'm not going to call it yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that so far, for 2023, Duna has been my favorite new drama. There's two more. I want to still see Twinkling Watermelon and My Dearest, which could unseat.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying I loved it. And I know that you were a little bit more so-so. And Megan's watching it right now. And Megan's apparently loving it, which makes me happy. Because there's not many people who love it like I love it.
I feel like the patron were with you more than with me. So my TLDR of it is like I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I didn't love it because it just didn't get me in the feels. Like there was a lot to admire in it, like individually as a drama. But I just never... Yeah, it just never got... I got to the end and I was dry-eyed and I was like, it's nice, but yeah. Yeah,
and I was wet in a non-sexual way. I was wet in my face. I was wet in my face quite a lot, and I just felt like it had me by the throat a lot.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's great that Mega's enjoying it. So that would be nice for you guys to pod.
Yeah, but maybe we can bring you in as a dissenting. I don't know if Amy's...
I'd always happy to be a dissenter, but yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. I don't know if you know, but My Dearest has been so popular in Hong Kong. In Korea. I've got Hong Kong on my brain. The ratings have been so good. They've added an extra episode, so it was already a 20 episoder, which they'd split into 2 parts of 10, and now it's going to go to 21 episodes. So another plug. So me and Grace are preparing our year-end review pod on Afternoona Asks. So we've got a few patron coming on to talk to us about their favourite dramas, and we're going to talk about our favourite dramas of 2023 as well. And Grace is like, I got to figure out, what's going to be my favorite drama. And I was like, mine has changed through the year, but I need to finish these last few episodes of My Dearest because it could potentially be my favorite drama of the year. But if it's not, then so far it's actually Moving, which I was trying to get Amy to watch because I really feel like it's an Amy drama. Because it's like Marvel meets K-drama. Yeah, I'm surprised look, I know we're all busy. I just am surprised because that one feels like an Amy one too. So we'll see. I mean, look, we're only we're getting into middle November. I feel like I'm not going to call anything until mid-December because I need to catch up on a couple things. Yeah. Cool. So, all right. Well, we are going to get into... it's not an oldie, but I feel like, the pace of K-drama is so relentless that, if you're watching something not of the year, I feel like we kind of like go back in a little time machine. Yeah. Actually, do you know what? Our last pod was Our Blues. And this was a drama that came out around the Our Blues time. Okay, yeah, because this is 2022. This is not an old drama. No.
Okay, so I'm going to just give... I went on Asian Wiki to just pull up the blurb. I don't think it's a particularly good blurb, which is why I want to share it. Because I think it's interesting how they try to sell it, and I kind of want to discuss that as well.
Do you think they try to sell it, though? I think they just kind of wrote the bare bones of it felt like... Anyway, you read it. I just felt I'll say what I think afterwards.
Yeah, I don't think they're trying to sell it. However, a whole other conversation at some point needs to be about how shows do... Blurbs, the functional duty of many blurbs is to kind of like sell the drama. Asian Wiki, their job is not to necessarily sell it, but they're just trying to say, what is it about?
Yeah.
I do think at some point there should be a whole podcast on how shows get branded sometimes, or what gets sold, because I don't think it's a one size fits all, and I think there's ways that like sometimes there's a misstep to how something's packaged.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Okay, so I'm just going to read through very quickly the Asian Wiki blurb because I thought it was interesting enough to discuss. So here we go. My Liberation Notes tells the story of 3 siblings and a stranger. So we have Chung-hee is the middle child of the 3 siblings. He wants to escape from his family's home in Sompo village, but he doesn't have a dream and just spends his life meaninglessly. He is looked down upon by his family members. Then we have Mi-jung. She's the youngest child of the 3 siblings, and she would like to be liberated from her boring life, but she is introverted and timid. She is lonely and feels unfulfilled in her life. I feel like Megan at this point would be like, I'm never, ever watching this movie. Then we have Mi-jung, the oldest child of the 3 siblings. She has a hot temper. She wastes a lot of time commuting to her job in Seoul from Sonpo village. Her life is filled with complaints, and she wants to find love. And then we have the famous or infamous Mr. Gu, who if anyone has heard about My Liberation Notes, it's probably because people talk about Mr. Gu, who is a mysterious man who suddenly appears in Sompo village and is always drunk. One day, Mi-jung approaches him. ... So,
I mean, to be fair, Megan would have lost interest when she found out who wrote My Liberation Notes.
Yeah.
Because
100%. We're going to get into some of that too, about the writer and how this is a writer who's going to work for some people and not work for others. But for you, what do you think, in me just kind of going through that as like a cursory blurb, what are some of the key points missing to sell this to a listener?
Well, I think you mentioned it. I think Mr. Gu. I mean, it's very hard, I think, to summarize Mr. Gu. But obviously, if we were writing a romance blurb, we'd have made him sound much more sexy, captivating, magnetically mysterious, and unpredictable. And also, just as a K-drama fan, you'd want to... Like, I think Son Seok-woo's performance of him... Like, he is one of the most unique male leads of a K-drama, I think. And he's played to perfection by Son Seok-woo. It's really a very unique performance.
Yeah. I would agree. I would say I did not realize how much being a woman in my 40s, I was going to appreciate seeing an actor in his 40s at like the top of his like power of like everything. I mean, he is... I tried to sell I almost got Megan at one point. I actually don't want to sell it to Megan because I don't think she'll like it and I don't want to hear about it. But I did try to sell it to her at one point and I was like, he is sad and he is sweaty and he works with power tools for like the whole first half of the drama.
Yeah, I guess that's the most Megan sell that you could. I mean, that's the other thing. It's not cold, right? It's not cold like My Mister. It's actually really hot and very, very sweaty, this drama. It's the opposite of My Mister.
Yeah,
it's weather-wise.
It's like, the sweat is pooling in like all your undergarments sweaty.
Exactly. They really got the heat. It was really claustrophobic heat. They did that really, really well. I think in general the cast is on top of its game. I think Kim Ji-won is amazing in this, but also Lee Min-ki. So I think order-wise, did you watch this one first before you watched Because This Is My First Life?
I watched this. Give me a second. I watched this before Because This Is My First Life. Yes.
Yeah, so mine was the other way round. So for me, Lee Min-ki was just like, wow, because he is so different. He is just so different. And then I think this is absolutely, you know, a kind of a drama that's slow burn, it's character driven, it's slice of life. These are three things that absolutely hit you in the feels and maybe doesn't for others. So I think if this kind of drama is your thing, it will speak to you. But for me, it really does too. So imperfect characters living life in a village that isn't rustic and cute and charming like it is in other K-dramas, but one that's claustrophobic, full of backbending agricultural work in the searing heat. It's very, you know, it's deliberately set in this kind of real rustic environment and not it's not adding a K-drama sheen to anything. And then the script, I think the script is amazing. And I mean, I liked it when I always liked it when I was watching it. It's actually one of the very few dramas where I actually paused it as I went just to scribble down quotes and put the quotes up on Insta, because I just thought they were so good. Like, I think this writer is at the top of her game, and there are whole sections of dialogue that the characters say that I just really, really loved. So just to give, for those of you who've not watched it, a bit of a flavour of that. One quote early on from Mi Jong, who's played by Kim Ji-won, I think spoke to so many of us who felt this at some point in our hamster wheel of life. I'm exhausted. I don't know when it all started to go wrong, but I'm exhausted. Every relationship feels like work. Every moment that I'm awake feels like work. Nothing ever happens. No one ever likes me. And I just remember, like, she said it in the amazing way that Kim Ji-won delivers her lines, and I was just like, oh wow, that is, I think that just hits home for so many people. So many people.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's like, really this drama could be summed up in, like, you know, the idea of like the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation. Like, really, that's kind of like what the heart of this is, which is why I'm 100% convinced my co-host should never ever watch this, because they're, and I mean, I'm not trying to belittle, it's just not for them. And I think that you also have to, and I'm going to get into some thoughts in a second on it that I wanted to pull from another source, but I think you need to have a lot of patience with this drama too.
Yeah, it really takes its time, and I think that's part of the magic of it as well. I think this drama, when you start off, I mean, they're not particularly likable characters. They're quite spiky, or they're quite silent, and they're quite hard to read and quite hard to place. And this drama just draws you in, and then you don't realize how much you're rooting for them and how much you come to love them until stuff kind of happens to them. Things get thrown at them and you realize, wow, I'm really invested in their lives, and I'm really invested in seeing them grow and their character arcs. And it's kind of the genius of the show, I think, that in some ways the blurb can't really sell it, because actually nothing really that much happens. It's not like crash bang, huge drama, huge massive amount of conflict. It's actually just these characters kind of working their way through very human-like life.
And here is my like pitch to this, is that sometimes I feel like I've had, like, I'm gonna pick on some dramas. Like, I'm gonna pick on one I really dislike, which is Cafe Minamdong, where I'm gonna say that, like, I feel like just in that drama, so much felt like it just happened to happen, because it was like, we just need to like keep energy going. We need to have stuff happening to get to the end. And so I felt like I was so bored, because I just felt like it was just stuff to happen to like be funny, but it never felt really funny. So I just, like, to me, I feel like there was like a frenetic energy to it that just didn't work. Whereas to me, this is like the opposite of that, in that, like, there's no frenetic energy, but I don't think it like loses its way. I don't think it's a meandering story. I think it's just very deliberate. And so you just have to accept the fact that, like, yeah, there's not going to be like big bang crash funny stuff happening. But if you just go along for the ride, the journey, like, the writer knows, and the actors, they all came together, and they basically, like, the story tells itself. The director made sure this drama was shot really well and really interesting. I think, like, the camera angles and everything are really cool in it. And then I feel like the actors all, like, make it not sappy, because they're all layered and they play it very interestingly and enigmatically. And it like, and again, like, yeah, these are people that at face value, these are not the most likable people you've ever seen. They're not horrible people either. They're just people, but you're kind of like, oh, I mean, they're okay. But I'm not like, oh my God, it's not like Kong Han-nul at the beginning of When the Camellia Blooms, where, like, again, that's kind of campy, but, like, he's so adorable that you're like, I'm just going to love him no matter what. Like, it's not that kind of a small town vibe. No,
I agree. It's not hometown cha-cha-cha.
No, it's going to be like, you go into your office and there's people that you're, like, friendly with and, like, you know, you can make some small talk over coffee, but you're not like, boy, come and go on lunch with me and, like, let's hang out and get to know each other. You're kind of like, they're all right.
Yeah. And then my last one was an unconventional romance. One that you wouldn't root for in real life because no friend should fall for an alcoholic man whose name you don't even know. But you do. You do in this drama, and it is one of the most offbeat romances. And again, it's another genius of the drama, I think, to make you care and root so much for these two people that it doesn't give you romance beats. Like their romance, the way it happens, it's not conventional at all, and nothing happens in the pace that you think it will happen. There isn't, it's not following an obvious romantic line. But yeah, by pretty early on in the drama, you kind of find yourself rooting for them.
Yes, and we're going to get into that later because that's a wild success this drama has. There's no business that you should root for this couple to work. None.
Yeah, none. Yeah.
Okay. So I was like reading a little bit about, because I know a lot of people, I tend to feel like if you watched it, you tended to like it. I think like you knew going in that this was going to be something you liked. So I wanted to kind of just see like, what did other people think or, outside the bubble. I didn't see a lot of people though who went through the whole drama and walked away unhappy. So, but one thought that I enjoyed was it came from a site called Review Geek. And sometimes I enjoy opinions posted there. And so I'm going to read this one, which was, on paper, My Liberation Notes should be another JTBC misfire. Hot off the heels of Green Mothers Club, Forecasting Love and Weather, and 39, My Liberation Notes look to follow suit and slip into uneventful mediocrity. With a super simple premise, a very slow pace, not to mention a stacked weekend of shows to compete against. It seemed like the chips were stacked against this one. Like the battle between David and Goliath, sometimes the most unexpected outcome occurs. And thus, that's exactly what happens here. Carefully constructed, walking a tightrope between slice of life and character drama, My Liberation Notes is a special series and an astonishing example of how to tell a simple story exceptionally well. And I was like, that's it. To me, that was like, that's the sell. It is. I hadn't really thought before about just making a big distinction between slice of life and character drama. And I think that's probably a mistake because sometimes you do get slice of life without a particularly deep dive into like a character drama. And I think that's another conversation to have for another time. But really in this case, that's what this writer seems to. I mean, My Mister was the same, right?
Yes.
And I have not seen another Miss O yet.
No.
Have you?
That's kind of, I have. I really loved it. I was messaging Megan all the way through it, and she hated it. It was quite funny, but I don't kind of think of it as a comp for this. Actually, only in terms of its writing. I think it's like the writing. I think you can tell that the writer is the same, but it's much more lighthearted, much more comedy, much more dramatic, much more romance, and less slice of lifey.
Yeah, well, I need to see it because I feel like I might be missing one, but I feel like at least those are the popular trifecta. Like she must have some other stuff, at least stuff that she's worked on, but those seem to be like what she's known for now.
Yeah, no, you need to watch it. It's Alison's favorite, like it's one of her top dramas.
Yeah, it's one of my plans to watch. I'm definitely watching it in the next few months. So, but I feel like again, it's one that I want to like take some time with because in some ways, I think at some point we are going to get into My Mister, and I want to talk about why. Because My Mister, I always feel like I got misrepresented, that it became like the pod just didn't like My Mister, and I was like, did everyone forget that I liked My Mister? Fine. My problem, I think, was that My Mister ended up not being my favorite drama I've ever seen, whereas so many people felt like that. So it was like, I felt like there was like no space to be, and I wasn't even like, meh, I liked it. I was like, no, I legitimately think this is a good drama.
it's just not my most favorite drama. And that's okay. Like, this isn't my most favorite drama either. I just think it's a damn good drama.
Yeah. I get that. And I feel you. I think it's maybe because, you know, your co-hosts were so vehement. So it felt like your stance it got overshadowed a little bit.
Yes, I feel like it too. And people have like written to us over and over, like, why did the pod not like it? And I'm like, was I just not there? Like, what happened? And so
it's true, but then this. I think for me, like, so Grace and I have talked about. So Grace and I are actually doing our own My Mister. But we're doing it with our Confucian miniseries. So we're going to talk about Confucian influences in Asian society, and then kind of link it with real life examples into My Mister, but then at the same time give it the deep dive we think it deserved. So I think what it is was that those of us who were big fans of the drama, like basically most of the time, we feel like one of the three of you will come and represent like our views the closest. And I think most of us kind of knew that it wasn't going to be an Amy and Megan drama. And so we pinned our hopes on you kind of being the one who was going to be like out there to bat for it. So I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah, and I will say that, yes, there's elements to it that I think that, like, looking at the lens that you're using and the experiences that resonated for you the most, I think that, yes, some of those did not land as hard for me. For a bunch of different reasons, most likely because I'm a white lady from the U.S. too, and I mostly relied around the grandmother character. I feel like is where I was kind of like I was just not as like engrossed in like kind of her ending and like what happens in like the greater world with that.
Yeah.
I was like not
against
it. I just didn't like. No. I wasn't like, oh my god, yes, I get this. Like I was just kind of like, it's
yeah.
Okay.
And I think also, I mean, like Grace and I will touch on this as well, but I think there's also, I mean, we're getting off thingy a bit, but I think My Mister carries on a kind of tradition in Asian dramas of hugely, massively tragic things happening to the female lead. And that being a basis for her story. And I think I do remember for Megan, it was just too much. It was like, this is just not very realistic that this person would get put through so much, but I kind of like when I was listening to it, I was just kind of reflecting that actually, yeah, I think that might be because, you know, the dramas I grew up with watching, I mainly watched Hong Kong dramas, but there was always this thing of like, look at this poor characters that this, like we're gonna throw like a ton of shit at this character and then, you know, watch them kind of go through it. So I think there's this kind of drama, I guess, tradition or legacy that then didn't kind of hit me or Grace as that unusual because it's, part of kind of what we grew up with.
And this felt less like that over-the-top stuff. Like, nobody was just showing up to, like, you know, punch the... Well, I mean, I guess they kind of... Some of them do punch characters in the face. But I'm saying, like, Mi-jung isn't, like, waking up in the morning and someone's just beating the shit out of her for, like, a loan shark gone wrong deal, you know?
No. Yeah. This is a lot... I think this is firmly... purposely more normal, in quote marks.
Yes. Slice of life. This is actually life, as opposed to, like, something fantastical.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so, you know, we're in the non-spoiler section, but overall, I feel, and here's the other thing, is that you may like these in dramas. I kind of like this thing, but I feel like she kind of the writer has always, like, a lesson or a thing she wants to, like, leave the viewer with. And so in this case, what do you feel like the lesson was of My Liberation Notes to you?
I think for me, it was that we all need to escape the expectations that society has on us, or our own family, or our own sense of duty, and find our own path to liberation. And that liberation will mean different things for different people. And I love that in the show they reflected what that liberation meant for different characters, and some quite unexpected ones as well. And that, as you quoted earlier, that everyone is living their own lives of quiet desperation. And even if it doesn't seem like it on social media, where everyone's living kind of very shiny, polished, happy versions of themselves, that we, all of us, have our own inner struggles and inner sorrows and inner things that we are conquering, despite how much someone might see, how successful someone might seem, how much they seem to be smiling, how, you know, successfully married, got their kids, got a successful career kind of thing. It looks like that they have. We all need to find our own liberation.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I'm also just going to say that the lesson is a long commute sucks.
Yes. I was thinking that was one of the things that was so real. Like I didn't ever have a massively long commute, but I definitely did have, you know, that Monday to Friday. I worked super long hours. I used to work in investment banking in London. And so I'd leave my house when it was dark, and I would get home and it was still dark, and it was dark again. And, you know, I'd lost the best hours of daylight inside an office with fluorescent lighting. And it's just that drudge, that trudging along, and this kind of like, you pull yourself through every day, and it's just exhausting. And I remember this drama making me, it really took me back to that time in my life. Because now I don't commute at all. Like, I work from home, so it's a life I feel like I really left behind. But they just did it. So it's just, I think that, you know, and they didn't slam it in your face at any point, but there's just so many modes of transport that this family had to take in order to get home. Every single scene, you know. So yeah, it did really drive home.
Yeah,
that whole
and I think
soul living.
I mean, I'm making a joke, but I'm also not, because, okay, for me, I'm going to say that, like, especially lately, like, I am so, I think, blessed in many ways that, you know, I have a day job. You know, I am a working author, but I have a day job where I work at a university, and I am either on campus where I open up my apartment and I'm at my job, or I am living in my family's home, which is maybe a kilometer away. And so my commutes are non-existent, basically. In some ways, I almost have such a short commute. It's hard to switch back and forth. And then my husband works from home, so we don't have this. But what it did was it really made me realize, because where we live is also extraordinarily expensive. And so in some ways, some of this is like my privilege, and how I moved here at a time long enough ago that was during like the big global financial collapse, and was able to, you know, purchase a home and which is a big privilege for me. And a lot of my coworkers don't have that privilege. And in fact, people are moving further and further away from our workplace because just to pay rent, like a 3-bedroom house in my neighborhood right now is like $6,000 US a month, which is an extraordinary sum of money when the wages don't come close to matching that. And I'm not a wealthy person. Like, I'm not a wealthy person. And at all. And so just to be a person who has like a regular middle class job that, you know, whatever, like, people are having to go to such lengths now. Like, I know people who are commuting like sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes with traffic, almost 2 hours one way to get to this job. And it just made me think, like, what does that do to a person over time? And like, where do you start to lose your ability to dream? And where do you begin to just think your world just goes off center because this is just sucking at, like, this relentlessness. So, I mean, like, in some ways I'm kidding, but I felt like that commute was like a part of the character. Like, it was another character was that commute and how it sucks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It absolutely was. Yeah, I agree. And that's why, like, I think there's a sign that she passes on the way to the commute that she takes a photo of to send to Mr. Gu at one point. It was just like, even that sign was just, you know, an alleviation part of the commute where it was like, okay, there's a little bright spot, you know, that's her little pocket of joy that she found on her daily trudge into the office.
Okay, so yeah, I always like to do a couple questions that are like personal to, you know, us as well, because I think it's like how we experience life shows how we connect to dramas and story. So what does liberation mean to you?
So I think for me, it's finding a pocket of joy, right? Finding a thing that's just yours and yours only, that is a pocket of joy. And I think actually that became even more important to me when I had kids. I packed them together. So I had 2 under 2, and I was a stay-at-home mum for those years. And I just remember there was there was times I was like, I'm losing my head here. Like, everybody I meet is another mum that want, all we talk about is like sleep routines and weaning and toilet training. And I just want to speak to people that don't care about this thing, right? I mean, I need my outlet. I want to complain about all these things, and I do want to talk about weaning, but not like the whole time. And so I think I remember at that time it was my crafting, so I knit and crochet, and that kind of helps take me out of it because it's not related to the kids. But unsurprisingly, since we were on this podcast talking about K-dramas, for me, for a while now, it's been my K-drama land, and this little community that you and Amy and Megan and others have helped to grow. And it's my own little pocket of, because actually it's nothing to do with my everyday life. It's nothing to do with my family life. So it's this little kind of place I can go to whenever I want, because I've got it on my Instagram, and so it's on my phone. If I have like a 5-minute wait between appointments or something, I can just pop back in and see what's happening with everybody. So yeah, it's become my little pocket of joy. And I think the whole thing is actually quite apt in a meta way, because I think one of the threads of this podcast network that we're all jointly building together is about finding that joy in amidst the daily drudge of your life.
Yeah, I mean, yes to everything you just said. And I think for me, what I'm going to go into, because I think that we would have been great parenting friends, because now there's nothing so painfully tedious to me is seeing a bunch of first-time mothers get together and talk, because I'm like, just don't, like, who cares about the organic wipes that you're using on their butthole? It's poop. Like, just let it go. Just don't, and I went through a period where I got sucked into it for a short amount of time. When I say I got sucked in to where I was absurd, because I tend to get obsessive. And so
you homemade stuff, didn't you?
I homemade laundry detergent to wash the baby's clothes. And I would grind it. I would grind this certain kind of organic soap to where my knuckles and fingers would bleed, because I had a cheese grater thing, and it would constantly cut my fingers. And oh my God, I was a disaster, because I got caught up very much in the attachment parenting, blogging kind of shiny. And I thought I was smarter than that too, but they get you when you're vulnerable and exhausted, and you're trying to do your best.
You want to do your best, yeah.
Breaking generational traumas, and you're like, I'm going to try my own way, and I'm doing this. And I was living apart from family for good and bad. And so, yes, I think that I had about 2 years where I really was sucked in, and then I kind of what is it when you get deprogrammed? And that's not to say that I'm anti-attachment parenting. I'm at this point, I'm mostly just you do you. I just never want to hear about it. I don't care. I don't care. All what you do, you are not going to validate yourself to me by what you do as a parent. Whatever you need to do to get through the day, I appreciate you for that. So I think for me, what that comes down to too, because I think about my liberation in time, has been, I have just started to commit to my own selfishness. And considering the word selfish has always been such a negative word, and very much focused on and also could be considered to be a very Western word, right? I'd be but just that idea of the sense of self having the ultimate primacy is not what I'm talking about. But I'm saying that what I've started to realize is that if I don't name and defend my pockets of joy, essentially, and say that these are vital to my being, then I am not going to show up in any space in a way that anyone's going to derive benefit from. I need to identify that myself has value. My value can't just be how I turn up for everyone else in the world. And so that's my use of selfishness. Not that I have to advance myself by stepping on someone else. Not that I have to center myself and make someone else diminished, but essentially be and I have, it is a difficult thing to do as a woman. It's a difficult thing to do societally. I've had huge arguments in my home with this. I've had family and friends who think I am, because I will not make plans, or I will be I cannot do things because I'm going to do this other thing that I'm valuing. Not because I don't care. It's just we all have 24 hours in the day. I have to sometimes pick, and sometimes I'm going to pick the things that I am personally going to need in that moment, not what you might need of me in that moment.
Yes. Yeah, I agree that it's especially hard for women, I think. Yeah. And bully for you for making that space and defending that space.
And it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. And I think actually, honestly, that's what mums should be talking about, rather than like, you know, the best things to win their organic salmon like recipe or whatever with their kid, which is going to end up on the floor, by the way. Yeah, we should be doing that rather than all of that. But yeah,
we just want to be told sometimes that we're going to do it right. And I mean, that's the thing, is I just want to be like, whatever you're going to do that like is non-abusive and makes you feel good, is going to be the fine choice.
Yeah.
Whatever that.
And also, and sometimes you're just going to get it wrong, but you know, it's fine. Children are remarkably resilient.
And you know what? We are all healing from our, you know, we're all in a process of healing from our own backgrounds. Our kids are going to have bumps. Like, and what's amazing to me is sometimes the things that and this is like very digressing. I don't want to go off on this tangent, but it is interesting for me to sometimes see my kids reflect back to me, like the things that they're going to carry away as like a hurt or something I caused them, and be like, oh, here's a pain point that like I've left you with. Yeah. And one of them has been, because they all got me at different times, my youngest very much being like my husband's been out of town for a week, and she's like been like, when is he coming home? And I was like, oh, you're really missing dad. Like, you know, do you want to talk about that? And she was like, I miss playing cards because he plays cards with me and you're always working. And then she does her extra sad face. And I was like, I'm not going to like go and like weep in a corner about this, because I'm actually have been very available to you, and I feel okay to be like, this has not been like the nanny's been driving around this poor abandoned child. But, you know, I could see, I was like, okay, this is where she's selling herself the story, and that's her experience. And I can be like pointing to all these things where we've had touch points that like matter. Plus she sleeps in the bed every night next to me. Plus I'm like picking her up from school. I mean, I'm like, okay. But I had this moment of like, oh God. And then I was like, and I'm not going to play cards with you. Like, I'm just not.
Yeah.
Like, that is, you just didn't get the mom who's going to want to do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm very matter of fact about it in the house. I'm the same. My husband's fun dad, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just the one that does all of the shit that, you know, runs the house and gets you clothed and gets you fed. But I'm not fun dad. I'm not fun dad. Go find fun dad, you know? Yeah. And
if fun dad's not here, find a way to make your own fun.
I know, Fun Dad will be back. Fun Dad will be back. Why don't you invent a game ready for when Fun Dad arrives, you know, and then you can go be ready to play.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's niggled at me enough I bring it up here, but I will say I went to bed that night not thinking about it ever again.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the spoiler section. And here we're going to talk a little bit first about the author, Park Hae-young, who is a South Korean screenwriter. And as we've already now said, she is best known for writing television series like Another Miss O, which came out in 2016, and My Mister, that came out in 2018. So, it's safe to say that this writer, we know, does not work for the other Afternoona Delight co-hosts, Megan and Amy. And I just want to talk a little bit more about why we feel like this writer may work for us. And this is another time if you do want to touch on some of these other dramas as well, Sarah, especially since you've seen Another Miss O, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, so as I've already mentioned, I think before, that My Mister is actually still my top drama. So for me, the parallels here are, again, characters whom living is like a slog. It's a really visceral way, I think, this writer manages to make us feel that it's really these characters are just literally putting one foot in front of the other and just getting through the day. They're not actually living. They're just kind of physically in a realm where they're surviving.
Yeah, surviving. They're surviving.
And I think watching them free themselves of this and begin living life, begin making connections with somebody else, and living for themselves and not for others, not for their family or for duty, is also another one of the themes that really strikes me. I think the other thing that I think this writer always is really, really good at, because actually My Mister is the relationship between the My Mister, the Ajusi, and IU's character in My Mister is really quite unique in K-drama land as well, because they are not romantic, but then they're also not strictly platonic either. But they're also deeply connected in a kind of almost soulmate way, but not in a romantic soulmate way. And I really love that relationship. I really love that this story made that feel so real. And I've experienced something similar to it, so it spoke to me as well. And I think that in my liberation notes, they also do this really well with Mi-jung and Mr. Gu, who are more romantically linked, but as we've said before, have a very unique relationship with each other that feels very deeply connected in a soul way, like that they get each other in a really kind of unspoken deep way, and that they recognize themselves in each other. So I think that that's one of the writer's real geniuses. And I think both dramas for me are asking really existential questions of Korean society, of how much of their lives is being lived to societal Confucian norms, and the duty that it places on every single member of that family and the cast, and how much of what they want is their own life, like how much of their striving for liberation is them going against those societal norms and those Confucian ideals. And I think this is genuinely a question that all East Asian societies that have this Confucian background are kind of grappling with, because it's working out how that fits in. And I would probably also say, and Grace and I have just finished recording our first part of our Confucian pod, but it's been really interesting as well to kind of look at how neoclassical kind of neo-Confucianism thought and how they're trying to work out how that can be relevant in today's society. And because so much of what works has made, say, South Korea or China or Taiwan or Japan be a massively successful countries, but is also at the same time, I think, recognized by many people kind of contributing as well to some of the things that are kind of problematic in all of those societies. So deeply thematical, and that I love. For Another Miss O, it's as I said, it's a really different drama in the sense it's much more of a rom-com leaning drama than a slice of life. And I think probably for me the similarity is in the female lead, which is played by So Hyun-jin in Another Miss Life. She's basically a hot mess of a female lead, and she's brilliant. She's one of my favorite female leads ever, and she is really raw, really honest. She runs her mouth off, but she's really true to herself. And in that, she really reminds me of Gi-jong, who is the eldest of the three siblings, her character. So I think for me, that was the similarity for Another Miss O. How about you?
I mean, I think I don't want to say anything else just to say, I think you really captured like a lot of what makes this writer work. And yeah, for me, I think because I come from like an author background, but not a screenwriter background, there's a big, like, I have a curiosity here of how much does it feel like it's the power of the script versus the cast itself. And in this, I just feel like, and in my Mister too, but in this, because I enjoyed this even more, I think, you get the magic when you can have the whole team be strong. You've got, the director and the director's artistic vision of like how they want it to look, and having a good team supporting them. You've got an excellent story, and then you have an excellent cast that kind of gets the assignment and brings it to life. So it's cool to see that it is very much this like multifaceted group. And that's and so I think about that sometimes with like the writing, especially in a quieter drama, to be like, if these deliveries were flatter, if they were something like, where could this have been mishandled? Because I do think it could have been.
Yeah. No, I think they really nailed it. I think they really did. There's very little that I would say, okay, this I would have liked more of. So I've got a question for you, Leah. So actually it's your question, but I've deflected it back to you. If famously Mi-jung tells Mr. Gu to worship me, that's kind of, I think, for people who haven't watched the drama, that's one of the more famous things that is memed about and clips are made of. How did that phrase sit with you, and what would be your worship me request to a handsome stranger if you were in her role instead? It's a great question, Leah.
It is a great question. It's very difficult to have it flipped on me because I don't personally love being like super vulnerable. But as soon as I saw it, I'm just going to go with the first thing I said. And it is vulnerable because, look, this was fucking brave of this character to do this.
Yes.
And I felt like the minute that this happened, I was like, there's no way I'm not going to love this drama, because what a choice to walk into a space with a stranger who, you know, and just be like, worship me. It is a wild thing to do. And it was amazing. And so I think for me, look, honestly, I was trying to think about like, where is she getting at with the worship? And I was like, okay, again, I know this is grounded. I'm not Christian identifying. And I know this relationship practice is identified a little bit in like Christian marriage counseling, but it's kind of now, I think, got its own life. And that's talking about love languages. And so I don't feel like any of the love languages fully encapsulate necessarily like what I feel like my love language would be. And it would be the idea, and I know this like I'm trying to think of how to say it in a way that I don't feel dumb, because I only feel dumb because I'm embarrassed to like speak my truth. It's like a fine statement, but it would be to say, I think it would be to say like, see me. Yes. Because the act of being seen as like my whole self, not like a facet, not like the thing I need you to see in this moment to have a transactional relationship to get through my day. Like I was funny, so I like made you laugh, which means you're more likely to agree with my idea at work. Or I'm at home and I'm going to like be doing something because I know if I behave in a certain way, then I'm going to like get something out of it and whatever. Or, you know what I mean? Just like not seen because I'm just seen as like the prime mover that does all the shit in the background, like you were talking about. And so like, you're just kind of like, if you're not there, everyone notices it's not working. But like, you know, like when it's not like people are like, my mother-in-law once made a very astute observation about like the circular nature of like the female quote unquote type of work, which is like, if you cook something and it's good, everyone just eats it and it's gone. If you do the laundry right, like it's just clean clothes are there and it's all gone. Like, you know, so if you're doing everything like properly, it all is just kind of happening and like no one notices it.
Yeah.
And so I just think that sometimes I realize that like what would, and I think it would be very difficult to be seen fully. I don't know how I would like to experience that, but I'd like to be curious enough to see what would that be like, to have somebody really look at you and see like all the different parts of you and really just take the time to see you.
Yeah. So I think you've mentioned already that you will see My Dearest. So we're recording this at the point when episode 17 of My Dearest has just dropped. And for people who are watching My Dearest, they'll know how significant that is, because we've all just finished episode 17 and just had like our hearts completely blown up by one of the best heartfelt confessions in K-drama in recent times. Like, this one piece of dialogue is exactly what you've just said. It's the male lead seeing all of the female lead, like all of her, and saying, I love all of those parts of you, but in a way more articulate way than I've just said. So yeah, you need to watch it just for that confession scene. My love language, so this is the other funny thing, my love language when I did the quiz was like overwhelmingly acts of service. It's both how I give love, which is quite a Chinese way because we make meals for each other, we don't ever tell each other that we love each other, but we feed people. So acts of service is my way of giving, my love language of giving, and it's also my love language of receiving. And someone made this very astute observation of me as well one day that said, you know, the trouble is that you have such good female friends who are so good at acts of service and know exactly what you would like. They would, you know, get you the perfect day and they'd arrange it perfectly and it'd all be like done properly because they're all like busy working mums who just get shit done. So no man could ever match your female friends in terms of what they could give for you, like your perfect day. If they were going to make your perfect day for you and arrange it for you, like what man on earth could ever do it as well as those friends? Like, I think the bar is kind of too high. So it was an astute observation, and probably that's what I'd ask for a worship me, but kind of tinged with this reality of like they probably wouldn't get it as right as my bunch of female friends.
Yeah, which is the curse of the cishet woman, if we want to play our sad violin.
Yes, so true. So true. So
okay, yeah,
Mr.
keep going.
So why did Mr. Goo work for you And why is he one of the sexiest characters in K-drama?
I mean, besides just the obvious of like, look at the man. I want to, because later on I'm going to talk about why I'm so surprised this drama worked for me so well, especially just given his complete commitment to his alcoholism. That should not have worked for me.
Yes.
And so again, we're going to say that this is the maybe best example ever of I do not want this in real life, but in fantasy life, the idea of that, like, my love and his worship of me is going to fix and heal plays to something like that. Like, because when we talk about that idea of universal fantasy and butter, somebody who's broken has like done things and experienced things. And so the idea is that you break, and then those broken parts can like leave those, those parts can become more places where it could be more empathetic, more, you know, like in real life, a lot of times the broken pieces become very toxic and defensive and painful. But like in a fictional sense, you can be like, if somebody's broken and like we connect and through love, like are healed, like those are going to be areas that end up becoming more rich and deep and powerful and vulnerable and healing. And so I'd say in some ways that kind of comes into play here. Is this idea that like, he's real sad, but like if we can just get it right, like that sadness is just, those deep valleys of sadness could be filled with love, and how deep those valleys go, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. How about you? I mean, yeah, I'm going to flip it back on you. Besides the fact he is, oh God, and like even as a real human, like separating him from his character, just watching interviews with the actor, it sends me through the roof.
Yeah. This is my first Sonsoku drama, actually. I've only actually done, so the only other ones I've seen him in are DP and DP2.
Yeah, same exactly.
And so what I think is the perfect marriage of a character with an actor, because there's something, and I know this sounds really unappealing, but there's something kind of oily about Sonsoku. It's a really horrible adjective to use, but it's kind of like he can be just so ambivalent, right? He could just be, he could both be amazingly good but amazingly evil in one. And there's something just a little bit kind of dirty about him, I think, which is what I think he works so well. Like, he was cast so well for Mr. Gu, because I think our K-drama male leads generally tend to be pretty kind of clean cut, so to speak. You know, so a Park Seo-joon, for example, or a Nam Joo-hook, they're just like, they couldn't have got Mr. Gu. Like, they just wouldn't have been able to kind of exude that kind of oiliness. I can't think of another adjective, but
yeah, I mean, he's sweaty and oily the entire time, and yet somehow it's appealing.
It's so appealing. It's just so appealing. And there's like this sleepy kind of eyed look that he has. That's kind of like in DP it kind of went into sleaziness, but in My Liberation Notes was just on the edge of that he just became that he is just, and his eyes, and I think one of the most clipped parts of the drama in terms of their relationship is his eyes as he's watching her when they're eating dumplings together. And it's just such a small scene, but it's just like his eyes are just adoring her. And I think the meme nearly always is, you know, like find a man who looks at you the way Mr. Gu looks at Mi Jong.
And I mean, the thing is it's a testament somehow, because when you find out like what his real job is and like what he does for a living, and it is kind of almost over the top. Like, I'm sure these people exist in life, but it was kind of like over the top, like, you know, like, oh, well, he's like really a baddie. And like, you know, like he's what would you even call him? Like, he's a loan sharkish mafioso
fixer. Yeah.
Fixer, yeah. Not good. No. And I mean, I didn't even really, I was like, okay, we all get like, I was like, yeah, I mean, like, okay, you got to go back to what you had to realize you're not that guy anymore, I guess. That's fine. You know, if you're going to like beat up some people, destroy some stores, do your thing. I was just kind of like, all right. In real life, I do not endorse this behavior.
No, or sleeping with, you know, having a flat full of like empty alcohol bottles. Yeah.
So just to be clear, we are now moving into the spoiler section. So from this point on, if you have not seen the drama, we recommend going to see the drama unless you truly feel like it's just not going to be for you, in which case, you know, listen and rethink your life choices. Sarah, what would be the sibling from the drama that resonates with you the most, and why?
So I loved all of them so much. I was actually surprised by how much I loved them, because at the beginning of the drama I really, really didn't. And I loved Chang-hee's arc. I loved the inner core of steel that ran through Mi-jung, but probably resonating wise, it's definitely Gi-jung who's the one who speaks to me the most. I think especially how easily she falls in love, and how we see her, she's kind of almost addicted to this whole up and down of falling in love, waiting for the text, being caught up in the excitement. That really reminds me of a younger version of me, and it's one that comes from, as it did for me, an insecurity about herself, that she's not quite good enough. So she's always chasing this kind of these feels, and the whole way she has to tell Taehoon her feelings, even though at that point in the drama, I think she feels like it's pointless because there's no way he reciprocates those feelings. She's still very true to herself. She just has to tell him, get those emotions out, and they're just always so close to the surface for her. And she just has such a clumsy way of putting her foot into things and just talking so much, that really resonated with me. How about you?
I mean, I think I love them all so much, but I'm going to go with Chang-hee simply because I feel like they thought they were certain ways and thought that they had certain plans that like should be for that. Like, you know, like they had ideas of what they wanted and what they had to do, and they had to kind of experience life and kind of do before they ended up being like, oh, I'm this like whole other person, and I'm gonna be like, I have a whole other path. Like for me, their happy ending was like the best, because at the end I'm like, you are on your true freaking path, my friend.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like, yeah, I've had to kind of like bounce around a little bit and be like, okay, this person I think I am, like, you know, and what my idea of success is for different things, like it's changed over time, and I sometimes no, sometimes like not completely, but I felt like I really resonated with that. And at the end, him just realizing that like the kind of person he thought he was going to be. And also I sympathized with the fact that like, okay, so he's the boy in the family. He's not the oldest, but he was meant to be this big success.
Yes.
So I'm the oldest in my family. And I felt like there was times where I was meant to be this big success, and I just never felt like I was, to some degree. Like there was this idea that like, oh, you were so smart. And I'm like, but I'm not so smart. Like I'm just like this is your fantasy of like who I am, not like actually who I am. And so I feel like I resonated with that as well. This idea that like sometimes he felt like he was just letting people down, and all he was trying to do was just figure his shit out. Like give him a second.
So yeah, I remember that Chang-hee at one point he says, I wish I wasn't the one, I wish I wasn't born the boy. I wish it had been one of you two, or something like that. And it was quite a throwaway comment, but yeah, it really struck me because it was really like the weight of the Confucian duty that's placed on him as not only a son, but the only son of the family, the only male of the family, and the expectations that were placed on him. And I think he really felt like actually his sisters were more up to it than he was. He didn't want it. He felt the weight of it, and I think it must have felt really claustrophobic for him.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So jumping over to the next question. So, you know, we've said there's a lot that we like here. What is a plot in the drama, though, that is a miss for you, if there is one?
Yeah, I think the main one for me is Gi-jung's arc. or lack of it.
I agree on this. So I think you're going to sum up my feelings in this as well.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted more for her. I just got to the end of the drama. I was like, is that it for her? I was surprised because obviously I really feel like this writer knows what they're doing, and I just felt like her character just got a bit shortchanged with where she ended up. And you guys talk a lot about mirroring in K-dramas, or in books and stories, and I really felt like there was a conversation she had at the beginning of the drama which kind of set off this relationship with Taehoon and the sister falling out with her because she was just bad mouthing divorced parents, right? And how that makes them really undesirable people to have relationships with. And then obviously Taehoon sitting there as a divorced parent with his child. And then at the end of the drama, she has another conversation where she's just bad mouthing, this time I think women that look old, or older women. And it just felt like I felt like, really, like, we've had all of this drama and she's had this arc and she's exactly the same place where she was at the start of the drama. I really felt like it was a miss. And then I think for her own relationship, I wanted either them to resolve the issues properly with his family, especially his older sister and his daughter, and have a kind of breakthrough, which I guess is quite K-drama, or I think they should have just done it properly and just broken her up, and in that moment she finds herself. So actually I find it really odd that they had a time skip in the drama, but then for her they didn't really come with a moment of epiphany, like we revisit her after this time skip, and if anything things are worse in their relationship. They're talking about kind of waiting until the daughter's like old before getting married or something. It just seems really, it just seemed a disappointing place for them to leave her, particularly as a character when she'd been so honest and vulnerable. And I just really wanted her to either be single and embrace being single and find her, sense of self-worth, or be with someone she could actually have a really equal and honest relationship with, that wasn't her being needy, because I still felt that that's where she was. That's where we left her at the end of the drama. And I actually always thought that she was going to end up with the womanizing boss that she ended up being quite friends with, and they kind of got each other. So yeah, that whole kind of her relationship arc especially bothered me.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to talk at the very end about like the happy ending or not of the drama. And in some ways I felt like the writer, this is where I feel like this is where I always wish we could talk to writers, right? Because part of me wondered, did they get into their own head enough here that they weren't letting the story organically tell itself? And they were like, I just don't want everything to feel like it's wrapped up in this neat bow. So she's going to not get to have that. And I felt like but the natural arc of the story with the mirroring, with everything, with where the story went, it didn't have to end where there was like no problems, Hakuna Matata for the rest of your days. But I felt like there was a choice to just not take that logical next step, because she's like, well, I don't want everyone to feel so happy. I want this to feel more real. And I'm like, you just kind of got in the way. To me, I felt like it just kind of got in the way of where the story was like, if you think of the story as like, a piece of marble and the writer like carves it out and like reveals its true form, I feel like you just like left that one piece there for no, like, yeah, why not just finish it off? It wasn't like the child had to like love you and accept you and you were the new best stepmom and it was all perfect. It was just like, it just ended very unfinished. And I was like, stylistically, maybe you just kind of like that and you felt like that was kind of like a cool choice. Yeah, it didn't have to end the happiest, but I just felt like it ended much more unfinished, given like that there was, the rest of them had a journey that kind of hit a conclusion.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think even if you just left her single, that would still be better than I think where they left her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if she had chosen actually not for me, like, I have sympathy, I love you, but like I'm going to choose me and walk away from this. Yeah. That would have been.
Yeah, because I think also with the whole, like, she finally cut her hair. I thought the cutting the hair thing was going to be her liberation. Yeah. And then we end up with her in the cafe still, like, talking to him. I just felt like, we'd gone backwards. Like, she cut her hair for a reason, surely.
I don't feel like she actually got a liberation in the end. And that's a mistake.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. I agree with that. And what about you? Were there any other plot points that...
No, I think I was, once we realized that he was just like this like criminal fixer, I was like, oh my God, are we going into this direction that just feels a little bit like we have to have like some sort of like high stakes external plot to like liven things up? Because we're just like,
right,
it just
yeah.
felt like it didn't tonally fit the rest of the movie. Like if he'd been like a low stakes bad guy, just kind of like a loan sharky, you know, I don't know, predatory MLM loan kind of guy. Like I was like, that would have fit. It just kind of felt like a little fantastical that all of a sudden he's just like this like ass kicking baddie, and I was kind of like, really? That's what we're doing? But
Yeah.
it wasn't enough that I fell out of it. It's just like it felt a little bit too exciting for where the rest of the drama felt very normal.
Yeah. I think for me it was kind of them putting the contrast of the life that he was leading versus the appeal of what living in the village and the life that he had with Mi Jung's family would have been. So kind of that high contrast.
But I feel like even just like having him be a regular baddie in the city, and like he could have been doing like lines of coke. Like I mean, I'm like lines of coke, womanizing, taking people for a ride. It just felt like putting in this like extra like high stakes fight. I was just kind of like, it just felt a little bit extra.
Yeah. But we did then get scenes of Sonsoku looking great in a coat and doing good fight scenes. So I was kind of like grateful for that.
Yeah. It's not my hill to die on. My hill to die on is much more the oldest sister and how the drama just kind of like left her hanging.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So this doesn't have to be a big thing, but what is a scene that sticks in your memory? Like if you think of this drama, what is something that pops into your head with it? Besides Worship Me, which I feel like, I don't know about you, I feel like that is like
it's
the butter of this. Yeah. I'm never going to, I mean, that's always going to be what I think of.
Yeah. Actually, it's a really small one. So it's a small voiceover. It's Chang-yi. And I just love Lee Min-ki in this drama. I think I love him more because I saw him in Because This Is My First Life, and he is so completely different. But it was in his lines, and I actually rewinded it just to make sure that I got them down. But he just says, and I'm going to quote, "And that's when the reason we broke up becomes that I watched a movie alone, or that she texted a guy late at night, and it can never be because she found out what a pathetic loser I am." And I just love that. And I think in a similar way as the Worship Me moment is the moment when we realise Mi Jung is not some shy, timid, quiet person at all. Like we had underestimated her, and the drama's suddenly saying, actually, this is who she is. She's like the biggest risk taker of all. And then I think Chang-hee's lines here tell us that actually he isn't as unself-aware and bombastic as we think he is. You know, he actually is very self-aware.
Yes.
And he realizes his own shortcomings, and he is, I mean, there are people that go through their entire lives living exactly this line and never realizing it, right?
Yes.
They're like people that serially date and dump and don't realize this is why they're doing it. And he just, you know, and this writer writes amazing lines as well, just says it in 2-3 sentences, and it's like, wow. I loved it.
I loved it to the point that if you made me choose between Chung-hee and Mr. Gu, look, Mr. Gu, I'd have to think about it, and I could be convinced to go Chung-hee. By the end of the drama, I was like, I could be just Team Chung-hee now. Like, I love this man.
Yeah, I love that man. What about you? What's the scene that sticks in your memory?
So we've talked about it already, but I'm just gonna, because this is, again, it's a small one, but it's the billboard, because I realized we didn't share what happened on the billboard, and the billboard just says something good. I think it says something like something good is going to happen to you today.
Yes.
And I love it because, like, first it's like a manifestation, like, you know, I'm a manifestation girly, but just the fact that, like, yeah, she sees it every day, that she sends it to him, and that it just becomes this thing in, like, that drudgery of life, just that, like, that's why we get up in the morning, is like something good is gonna, like, and I mean, like, I've decided to now live my life where I don't have a question, like, is something good gonna happen today? Like, I try to wake up every day with the idea, like, something good is going to happen today. And so, yeah, I just appreciated that, like, it felt like very healthy survival tactics And I appreciated that. Like, as much as getting a drink of water or having an emergency 3-day supply of food in your house, you have to have hope.
Yes.
And I felt like this billboard was like her reminder to just be like, have some fucking hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she didn't just
Definitely.
have hope because she acted on it. Like, she didn't just wait for something good to happen to her. She didn't just wait for someone to see her. She went to someone and was like, worship me. And that is like the bravest, most kick-ass K-drama heroine move I've seen yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, we were going to talk about their relationship more, I think. Were you going to say that at the end, or was there something else you were going to raise?
You know, I feel like we can talk about this. We're going to talk about his alcoholism now, and I feel like that ties up a lot into their relationship.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I had a question for Leah in the script that says, how do you feel the drama handled Mr. Goo's alcoholism?
So
And I think it's a very question for you.
For me, this was why I didn't watch the movie, or not the movie, the show at first, was because I knew that Mr. Goo was an alcoholic. Like, that was one thing I knew about the drama, was there was a hot alcoholic that was like committed to his alcoholism. And that actively sold me against it. And here's why. Because and I've talked about this, it's been a minute since I've talked about my problem with Nicolas Cage. And my worst movie, part of my hatred of Nicolas Cage, and that's not like as a person, like if he ever listens to this, like I don't hate him, like I don't hate his soul, I don't know him, but I will be like, I hate Nicolas Cage. Part of it is because I hate Leaving Las Vegas with my entire being. I remember when I watched this show, I was like, I have never hated something more, and sat and watched it. And I think it could be because like I've been touched by alcoholism in family. I've experienced like parts of it, never to the degree and never to having like, and actually I've never even had like a long-term love interest with an addiction. So, but you know, having seen it in like my extended family and seeing entrenched alcoholism. And then I know it didn't romanticize the journey leaving Las Vegas. I mean, like he basically is like, I'm committed to ending my life through drinking, but it felt just like the opposite of what we see like Mi Jung. I feel like it's like if we take Nick Cage's character in Leaving Las Vegas and then we take Mi Jung, like I feel like, you know, at some point people have forks in the road and they either decide to like slide into this like pain, pity, addiction. And again, this sounds ugly because I'm trying to say that like addiction isn't a disease, and I believe deeply it is. So I want to be careful with how I take it more seriously than I'm making it right now, but we're on an entertainment podcast talking about characters that are fake, not like the actual crisis that is the disease of addiction. But I felt like it felt very much like a man writing man's pain in a way that I am completely uninterested in. If I can be completely dead ass, that's how I felt leaving Las Vegas. I was like, this is centering male pain experiences in a way that feels actually harmful and toxic, and not the kind of embodiment of like what I want to see masculinity ever be. And so that's all I'm going to say about leaving Las Vegas. There were times that I felt like my liberation notes almost like stepped into some of those spaces of like her kind of being like, yeah, you're just going to be a fucking drunk there with 9,000 soju bottles in the house, and I'm not going to ask for anything different. And there were times I felt like we like crept into those spaces, but because this was a smart drama written by a smart woman, I felt like we never just kind of went into that. It was almost felt like Mi Jung was like either running experiments to see what would happen if she didn't put like, you know, like basically she had some sort of like sense of what she wanted, and she knew how to play like a longer game. I'm trying to unpack like how it works for me, because like at what point is it okay that we have this like multifaceted, courageous lion masquerading as just kind of a mousy woman who decides that she's going all in with this like complete drunk ass that is in his own pain and like his own toxicity, just wallowing in it. And she's kind of like, sure, if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. Like, you do you, boo. I'm still here, like, wanting you to worship me. I'm not going to ask you to change. And it just totally felt completely different than leaving Las Vegas for me.
Yeah, I wrestled with it. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the comparison that you made, actually, because I always have to. So I'm always watching my dramas, asking myself, where's my Western bias? Where's my Asian bias? You know, like, where do I land with this? And, you know, is it because of this, that, and the other? And I think, on the one hand, I think that the drama did a really good job of telling us why he's drinking, right? With some really great lines about the voices in his head only stop when he drinks. And that he's more human when he's drunk than when he's sober. And I think they do that well. But then I think there's a little bit, I think that just edged it almost across the line. I think there are scenes when, you know, there's the room in the village of where he lives in the village, the one that's filled with soju bottles. There's a scene where the soju bottles are glowing green.
Yes.
And it almost looks romantically beautiful.
Yes.
And that bothered me a little bit. So that's where I feel like it tipped into making the alcohol drinking kind of romantic in a way that I don't like. But then I also think that, and this is a topic I want to cover with Grace in our podcast another time, is just South Korea and alcohol. Because I think I'm probably, again, because I'm not Korean, on a different kind of scale in terms of the acceptance of alcoholism in social life, just generally. And so there's that. But then I think the Western part of me feels like they treated the alcoholism way too lightly in the show. Like it just wasn't a thing at all. It was just like treated like an aspect of his character rather than something that was actually problematic of its own.
And so, okay, here's something. This again, I want to be careful with like going into in-depth stereotyping, and this isn't racist. This is like me talking about my own heritage history, right? But I come from a very predominantly Irish, like there's more Irish in me than anything else. And when I go back generationally to like, let's say great-great-grandparent levels, and I like, because I do a lot of genealogy stuff too, and there's like some fucking skeletons in some of the Irish arms of my family. So I go back through like my mom's family to where there was like bigamy. Like my great grandfather like died of syphilitic madness and had like 2 or 3 wives and clearly had like a lot of drinking problems. I had a great grandmother who took to her bed at like 50 due to drinking and basically just drank herself for 20 years in bed. And there was just like a lot. And so I like these were behaviors that like when I'm going back that far to think, I don't know what the migrant history of trauma was that led to like, you know, like the people that were kind of in like the first and second generations once they got to the US to be in that level of alcoholism, right? I mean, like to have like significant serious, to take to your bed in your 50s and drink yourself to death essentially for 20 years. Like there's been trauma in your life. And so that got normalized then into like the generations that I was kind of raised in, of like uncles and aunts, and certainly like impact from like the Vietnam War and things like that. Just seeing this like normalization of dealing with pain through excessive drinking and seeing people making horrific choices, but we all just kind of live around it. And so you could be at a family gathering where something was going very far off the rails, and yet there was like this social cohesion of the whole to just kind of like be like, there's that. We're not going to talk about it or examine it or judge it or point fingers at it or say even that it's bad. We're all just going to kind of be like, well, that's just kind of what happens sometimes, and like keep going.
That's really interesting. It actually raises 2 things for me. It's slightly tangential, but I think it's interesting. So I had Korean American colleagues when I was working in banking, and one of them told me that Korea is like the island of Asia because of their love of alcohol, because they're a split country, because of their innate ability to be storytellers, and because they're all great singers. So, I mean, obviously, it's like a massive stereotype. She was kind of
I've heard this too. And I also want to be very careful that like I am not owning my Irish identity in terms of lived experience. I can just talk about things I'm observed as being an American who has a migrant history, where I can say that like, and when we talk about people who, you know, were actually part of that that country's migrant wave in my family. We're going back to like 3-4 generations out. Like this is not like people I would have ever met.
Yeah.
But when I go back in the genealogy to be like, oh boy, like these were some huge things that like my grandma and my great grandma, who I have met, were grappling with like their parents. Like I'm
in
like,
their
okay,
childhood.
Clearly there were things that were going on that were very, very, very difficult, and skeletons that have gone to graves that are like, you know, properly dusty now.
Yeah, fascinating.
So I think for me, that's where the alcoholism, like I do drink alcohol. I have been drunk in my life, but I think I've always been, and I get wary in a lot of romanticization of alcohol, simply because what I've seen has never looked romantic. It's looked so painful and unhealthy and sad and lonely, and like there's no other way you have to communicate. So that's where I think when it showed up in this drama, I was like, this is not what I'm going to enjoy to see, but in some way, and I should have the words because I'm doing a podcast on this to like unpack it to readers or to listeners to why this, like, it worked for me in this. But it's somehow, once we got to the worship me and overlaying that sense of worship, it was almost like a lifeline going out. And then I felt like there was like a slow crawl back, even though it's an imperfect crawl back. Yeah. I felt like it was like a reaching for the best self.
Yes.
Just not neatly, not like, oh, well, now I'm cured of alcoholism and like it's all good in the hood. Like none of that ever happened.
No. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that because as much of it as an act of bravery on her part, it was also matched by an act of bravery on his part as well, that he was going to make a human connection.
Yeah, so he hadn't even made the point of, I'm not going to not drink. It was just, I'm going to make a human connection and not just have everything in my life be completely numb.
Yeah.
And so I guess that with that as the, because if alcohol then serves as the numbing agent, and then we're seeing the heroine show up and be like, I'm not going to like just dismantle this. You're going to be the one to walk yourself out of this too. And I also appreciated that too. Like, I'm not here to self-help you. I am here to be here and know my own worth and demand worship, but you will be the one who gets yourself. And again, I don't want to, again, it's not exactly how I feel about addiction either. It's not like I think somebody can, it's much more complicated than what I'm making it sound like, but there has to be an element of a lot of this doesn't work in terms of recovery until the person is like, look, I've made that choice to start to do that. Yeah. I want to be very careful that I'm not getting into like judgments around recovery around this.
Yeah.
But this does tie up into the ending as well, because the ending does relate a little bit to.
Okay. All right. I'll wait for you to say it because I want to see if it's going to be the same point I was going to make. But yeah. So are we going to talk about the ending?
Yeah, okay. I mean, like, let's talk about the ending overall, and just as we talk about it, did it feel like a happy ending to you?
I think for me, when it came to the end, I did think tonally that it was, so in the build up towards the end, you know, when you're into the penultimate episode and you're thinking, right, where's this drama going to land? I did think it was going to be weird if everyone is all totally happy clappy. Like I knew that's not where this drama was going to be, and I don't think it would have sat right with me if that had been where it was. But I think when we actually got to the end, I felt a bit like, whoa, is that it? That was like really abrupt. Like the ending was, it came sooner than I was expecting, I think, even though obviously I knew from the timeline that I was actually close to the end of the episode. But I think afterwards, when I was reflecting a bit on it more, I came to like it a lot more than I did in that exact moment. And obviously it's kind of like, for me, it's quite an open-ended ending, but not in an ambiguous way. I think everybody is except for obviously Miko, who we've talked about, I think everyone is definitely in a better space, and even the members of her liberation club from work are all tangibly in a better place, but still kind of on their journey towards it. So it's not like it's everything's been fully resolved and everyone's happy clappy. And I did take the sign of Mr. Goo running off with his suitcase of his little holder of money, and that coin spinning and tipping so that it could go either way as a sign that he was leaving it to go and get his liberation and feel liberated with Mi Jung, possibly, probably, and finally kind of finding his place. And although we don't see it, I think that's kind of where the drama left us with it. But yeah, and I think that, as we've spoken already, that I think Chang Hee's arc is the most complete of them all, and I actually really loved how he kind of ended up in that funeral director's study course, and then started smiling to himself when he was like, "Yeah, this is exactly where I should be."
Yeah, okay, so let's just talk about that, because that is the neatest bow. I'm not always a big neatest bow bitch, but for this story, it was such an unexpected ending. Like, that was not... I had no idea where his story was going.
Yeah.
And I was just really happy that I was like, look at you stumbling into to exactly where you're meant to be, and then having the wherewithal and the self-knowledge to know this is where I'm meant to be. Because that's what I like about it, is that he is self-aware, even if he acts like a dum-dum some of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then we see kind of what happened with the whole, like, I think, was it the sweet potato ovens that he'd not picked up in order to be with the friend of Hyuna that was dying. Yeah, it was all just so well done.
Yeah, it was. And then I thought the coin toss, I mean, it's a little on the nose, but I liked it. And I felt like, to me, it gave... I felt like it made the... So this is where I was going to say my point with the alcoholism journey, was that I don't feel as if... I didn't want to watch I didn't want to spend time watching the drama with, like, the recovery part of the story, but I felt like it opened up enough of the window that I felt like, okay, recovery is possible here, and he can, like, I did feel like I could see happiness, but the ball's, it's also in his court, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm going to believe that he ends up making the right choices. But I like that, like, it kind of respected the viewer enough to be like, look, it's probably going to happen. We kind of don't know, though. It's going to be his choice. Like, here he is. Like, it's kind of, it can go one way, heads or tails. And I feel as if that kind of respected a little bit to the seriousness of the addiction without getting into, like, he wasn't going to go Nick Cage in it out with, like, well, I'm just drinking forever. And she's like, okay. And I was like, if that happened, I don't know what I would have done. But it also didn't feel like he was like, no more for me, which also feels just, like, very flippant for something that's a very heavy topic.
Yeah. Very good point. Yes.
So to me, that's, I really liked his closing of his arc. And then for Mi Jung, I felt like she was in her power fully. Basically, yeah. Like, and if he wants to catch up and get in with a beautiful, powerful, amazing woman, like, the door's there. Like, just walk through that door. Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only small little niggle thing I had was the conversation they had about how she was his therapy. And again, I don't know whether that was my Western bias as well. It was a bit like, I think when he said the line, I was like, yeah, but she's not, and she can't be. Yeah.
That's not her. She's too cool for that. And nobody is going. I mean, look, there is, and this is where, again, we have that K-drama reality, and where it gets hard sometimes, because this drama wanted to be taken as actual slice of life. Like, I feel like it really wanted to be taken as, like, real in many ways.
Yes, definitely.
And so that's where it becomes, like, in the fantasy of, like, rescuing a man or whatever, it's like, yeah, like, you're gonna save me. But, like, in this case, I was like, you're asking me to put on a pretty real lens and viewing this drama. And, like, you know, in this, you save yourself. Everybody here is saving themselves, or they're not.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But what an absolutely gorgeous and lovely surprise. And I give a shout out to, the reason I watched this, I do want to give a shout out, was due to Becky, who is the host of It's Bananas.
Yes.
She basically just kind of did the worship me sell, and I was like, what have I been doing with my life? Like, jump in and watch it. Like, I've been saying no due to the alcoholism. As soon as I heard really and just thought a lot about the worship me part, I was like, I'm in. I'm just watching it right now. And I just, like, got through it in like 4 days.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I was all in.
I think for me, I didn't watch it when it was dropping live either. I just wasn't in the right space in my head. Like, I always knew that I would watch this drama because I knew that I was going to like it, but I wanted to wait until I was in exactly the right headspace for it. And when I did, it was just great. It was so good. But Becky's loving my dearest. So obviously.
And you, and I trust both of you when you tell me you are going to like this. The only thing I have been feeling bad about is that I still haven't, and I am going to, is that I haven't watched The Red Sleeve, and I've been telling you I'm going to watch The Red Sleeve.
Yes.
So then I was like, well, how can I get to my dearest if I haven't even started The Red Sleeve yet? But now I'm like, I'm just doing it.
You're just doing it. Well, My Dearest is a 2023 drama, right? So you're doing it for the for the year-end thing as well. But so for those of you who don't know, I'm going to do a mini sell on Leah in case she hasn't heard it from Becky, and then also for the podcast listeners as well. So a lot of the Patreon have been loving My Dearest. So I think this is really hitting for those of you who this might be a thing. So it's a really epic historical. And it's very Gone with the Wind. So much so, because I think people made that comparison right from the start, and I kind of was like, I don't really see it. But as you go through the drama, you realize, there hasn't been a chosen Scarlett O'Hara, and there hasn't been a chosen version of Rhett Butler. But they've put this in this drama, and there is a very, very dull, Confucian scholarly Ashley. So that's like the kind of the setup of the drama. But there is so much that this drama puts these characters through, and the script is done so well. And this is my first Nam Gong-min drama. And he is just, I think, blowing everybody away. Like, his micro expressions are just amazing, and the chemistry he has with An Eun-jin is also incredible. So we're all just on tenterhooks because we just don't know. As I said, we're on episode 17 just dropped. They've just announced an extra episode, so we're going to have the 4 episodes left, and we just don't know how it's going to end. I mean, there's lots of us that feel like it can't have a happy ending because you just can't see how it's going to pan out. But most of us are living in hope that they'll somehow give us one. So it's not too late to start, Leah.
Here's a question that I have for you, because I mean, I'm sold. I'm so sold. Is this though? Because and I think this is fair to ask now because you don't even know how it's going to end.
Exactly.
Do you feel like Gone with the Wind is a door open happy ending, or a hard door closed sad end? Like, do you feel like with the relationship, I guess, door open, door
No,
closed?
I don't. I think it's not a happy ending. That's how I always felt like watching that film. How about you?
I felt like door open. Today's going to be another day. I was like, he's not turning down. He's in his pain. He's in his sads. He's in his feels. Scarlett's getting it back, of course. I trust Scarlett to close that loop. But I think that, look, horrible things happened to them. They were terrible people to each other.
Yes. Yeah, they were. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And he's so good with a sword. So I don't know if you're missing the whole Alchemy of Souls Jang-ok sword thing, but he is so good with a sword. He has some really great action scenes.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm really excited for this. So, yeah, and I mean, I'm curious. I'm just curious to see. And now the other thing is, I have no predictions because I haven't seen how much. So here's my other question: is how much of a retelling do you feel like it is? How strict of a retelling does it feel like it is? Or is it very kind of just subtly? If you were just going in cold, would you be like, oh my gosh, this is a Gone with the Wind retelling?
Oh, no, it's not a retelling at all. It's just the bare bones of it. And I don't know if Becky's warned you, because I know she felt the same way because we were talking on the Patreon chat about it. But the first 2 episodes are a bit I'm not really feeling this. Why is everyone so mad about it? Because I think Becky started it a bit later than everybody else. And I was like, just keep going. Honestly, just keep going.
Okay, so what's the episode it's all going to turn around?
I think episode 5, I think it is. Yeah, so you have to get through. I think you have to get. So basically, it's when shit starts hitting the fan. And it's very Gone with the Wind in that sense, right? Because the setup is these very superficial characters They're pretty materialistic. They're not actually very likable. They meet each other. They're kind of sparky with each other. And you're just like, I don't really care about either of you. You're just not very nice people. And then shit happens to both of them. And you're like, oh, okay, actually, they're not who I thought they were. They're like incredibly strong people and have, you know, inner cores of steel. And this is how they're going to handle everything that this period throws at them. And then if you're a historical fan, which I know you are, Leah, this then shines a light on a period of history that I don't think we've really seen so much. So it's when the Qing dynasty is battling the Ming dynasty for superiority in China, and as part of it they kind of bring the whole of the Chosun Empire in to become like a puppet state. And it's what the Qing dynasty did to Chosun during this period, which is a period that is still like a scar on most Korean people's memories in terms of like foreign countries invading their country.
And what kind of rough time, like what years are we kind of roughly talking about? Are we in like the
1600? Yeah, 16. Okay. I want to say 1630 or something. Yeah. So it's the very first, the transition from Ming to Qing and the Manchu conquest of China. So 1618 to 1683.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a really fascinating period of history as well. And the drama does really... So there is a little bit of court stuff and a little bit of like, you know...
That never bothers me.
That never bothers you. Yeah, I know. You're like, I know. But just for the other listeners, there is a little bit of it, but it's actually really interesting because it's less about like, you know, dowagers battling for their sons to be king type drama. It's more like, what are we as the Chosun, you know, dynasty going to do against this invading set of barbarians that just keep putting, you know, all these demands on us, and they're kind of making us do all these things to gain power. So yeah, It's great.
No, I'm into it. I'm excited.
Where did you get to with Call It Love?
Did I get anywhere with Call It Love?
Did you start it? I thought you were going to start it. I thought you had started it.
Hang on just a second. I have not started it. I don't think, unless I am missing something in like a deep hallucination. Let me just look it up.
Yeah, no, you did. You said you were like, she got into the funeral parlor and you were just like sold.
No, I have not. I got Hulu. No, you're right. I did start the... Wait, hang on. I think I watched this whole thing. I did. I think I watched the whole thing. Hang on. Oh no. Yes, I watched this entire drama.
It made so much of an impact on you, Leah.
Look, here's what happened with Call It Love. Now I'm remembering it because I kind of deleted it in my head. I thought the first part of it was amazing. Like, it feels a little like I have to go back and really like look at what happened to me on this, that I deleted it from my brain. I loved like going into the funeral home. Like the whole thing was just like perfect. And I liked him in it. I felt as if, you know what? I don't think I finished it. I think I might have fallen out around like episode 13, 14. Like I think I'm close to the end.
Right.
It felt not something in the rain in this terms of like it being the same kind of plot, but I felt like it had my interest very, very strongly.
Yes.
And then it just fell off to the point that I forgot it even existed. Now that I'm like putting it together, I'm like, oh, I was all in on that. I think I watched like the first 7 or 8 episodes in like 2 days.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened. I think I just was like, this just feels like it's meandering in the same territory. I'm out.
Right.
So I should probably go back and finish that, because I was like, Call It Love. I've never even heard of this before. And then I'm like, oh no, I totally have. So I was like, I got Hulu. As soon as I opened it up, I'm like, Hulu. Wait, I got Hulu to watch this drama.
Yeah.
I really deleted that from my brain. I like hardcore, like went into the hard drive and was like,
yeah. Oh, wow. Because I thought you really liked the pharmacist as well, like the second leads.
I have to go back and watch it, don't I? Because I'm like only remembering some of this now. I loved the beginning so much. And then I just have felt like it really, like, I just felt like it ran out of gas for me, but maybe it picks back up and I just got into a saggy middle, or maybe I was just getting too, like, distracted with other stuff. But you're right. I need to go back and finish this because I literally completely, like, I'm not kidding when I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know what this is.
Yeah, I know. I was there when you were like going, yeah, no, I didn't start it. I actually began to think, like, shit, did I not have this conversation with Leah then? Did she?
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to, like, ghost you on this, because the thing is that the beginning is one of the greatest, I feel like some of the greatest in, like, top tier scenes of K-drama. Like, I thought her whole going to her father's funeral and kind of the fallout and, like, the drama around that, I was in it 100%.
Yeah.
So
okay,
so you know what, how about I will revisit this, and this could be another pod that we have together, because I think I'm actually kind of, I want to go back to Hulu because I haven't looked at Hulu since, so nobody else has watched it, so I can see. Actually, I'm going to pull up and tell you exactly where I'm at, just for, like, the sake of enjoyment. Let's see where I'm at.
The patron loved Call It Love. They really did. So
maybe I will end up liking it a lot, and I just hit a point where, like, I fell out, and I'm going to come back being like, gosh, I just hit, like, maybe a small slump, and I just jumped out too hard.
Yeah, I think it was.
Actually, I'm pretty early in. I have just starting episode 6.
Oh, okay. I think it was it during the time, like, I think you were preparing to go to Seoul, so I think you had a lot on. Was it that time period, I think?
It very well could be. So I'm just trying to see what happened in episode 5 that really just knocked me out. I don't know. I don't know what. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch episode 5 so I can remember what knocked me out in it.
Yeah.
Because she's in there to take him down, right? Like, that's the whole conceit. Yeah.
It starts with a revenge thing, and then
but he's a big green. He's very cute. I do know he's very cute, and he's a big green flag hero. So, you know what? Let's just hit pause. I will go back and add that back into the fray. I'd completely forgotten about it, and I can tell you if I don't like it, why. But I can't tell you right now because it's too deleted from my brain for me to know. But now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, oh no, I was really into it. I don't know what happened. And then I was like, I felt like I did hit a point where I was like, oh, I feel like I have to force myself. I think in episode 4 or 5, I was like, I feel like I have to force myself a little bit. And then I think I just jumped ship I don't think I meant to jump ship forever. I don't think I meant to delete it from my brain.
Right. Okay, good. Because for most of this year, that was my drama of the year. Until I watched Moving. So
I haven't seen enough to say that I can be an asshole about it. I do know I loved the first, like, 3 episodes.
Yeah, I remember you messaging me, and I was, like, excited for you.
Yeah, and then something happened in it, and I forget what, but it felt like there was, like, a little bit of repetition, or it just hit me in, like, that'll be another conversation, is, like, when we decide to, like, when does something stop hitting us, and why?
Yeah.
And when it's an us thing and when it's a drama thing. Because sometimes it's the drama's fault. But I think in this case, I do think it was probably more life. I think if I can go back, I think I had a humongous amount on for work.
Yeah.
And there might have been something else I was meant to watch for the other pod. And so I jumped over on that. And it's just like, life just keeps moving. And sometimes you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
No,
I feel that. Truly was like, I've never heard of this drama that you're speaking of. And now I'm like, oh no, we had whole conversations about it. It's not you. It's really not you.
It's not the drama either, Leah, so give it another go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Well, this has been a very long drama, or a very long pod, but you know what? It's kind of a longer drama too, so I think it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a slow burn.
Slow burn, just like our pod today. And so we will be coming back and doing Call It Love, as well as
Something in the Rain.
Something in the Rain, yes.
Yeah, we're going to do that
with Megan, right?
Yeah, with Afternoona Army Megan, yeah.
Yes. And then I think we will also be doing My Dearest, maybe with Becky, because I guarantee Megan and Amy will not be watching My Dearest.
Yeah, I didn't even think of selling it to them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, I've got a lot to watch, so it's a good thing I have a weekend with no son or husband around and daughters that like to watch K-drama, and I'm going to just call it that for the weekend.
Yay. Excellent.
All right.
So lovely to speak to you.
You too. All right. See you.
Annyeong.
Annyeong.
Kamsahamnida. Thank you for listening to Afternoona Delight. Where can you find us outside the pod? Head on over to afternoonadelight.com. That's AFTERNOONADELIGHT.com. You'll find links to all our social media, our book recs, K-pop and K-skincare recs, and if you want even more Afternoona Delight, because really who doesn't, you can join our Patreon, where you can choose the patron level that's right for you. Join in daily K-drama conversations, listen to bonus podcast episodes just for patrons, and participate in our monthly live K-drama support group via Zoom. We can't wait for you to be a part of the community. Until next time, annyeong!